Hi everyone, my name is Rachel, and I'm 58 years old. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound absolutely unbelievable, but I swear on everything I hold dear that every single word of this story is true. And honestly, I need to get this off my chest because what happened to me, well, let's just say karma works in the most unexpected ways. You guys are going to tell me if I'm crazy for what I did, but I think you'll understand once you hear the whole story, because what my own children said to me, what they did to me after everything I sacrificed for them, it broke something inside me that I didn't even know could break. But wait, let me back up and give you the full picture first. I've been a single mother for 15 years now. My husband died when my youngest was just 7, leaving me with 3 kids to raise on my own. Jessica, who's now 28, Marcus, who's 25, and little Sophia, who just turned 22. I say little, but she's not little anymore, obviously, when their father passed away from a sudden heart attack. I made a promise to myself and to his memory that I would do everything in my power to give these kids the best life possible. And guys, I mean everything. I'm talking about working 2 jobs for years, sometimes 3, during the holidays. I cleaned offices at night after working my day job at the insurance company. I took on weekend catering gigs. I sold handmade crafts online until my fingers were raw from all the sewing. Every single sacrifice I made was for them. When Jessica wanted to go to that expensive private college, I took out loans I'm still paying off. When Marcus needed money for his business ventures, and I use that term very loosely because most of them failed spectacularly, I emptied my savings account. When Sophia had to have the latest everything because all her friends had it, I made it happen, even if it meant eating ramen noodles for dinner 3 nights in a row. I never remarried. Not because I didn't have opportunities, mind you. I had a few really wonderful men interested in me over the years. But every time things got serious, I'd think about my kids and how they might feel having a stepfather, or how it might affect their college funds if I had to split my attention and resources. So I chose them. Every single time, I chose them. My whole life became about making sure they never felt like they were missing out on anything because they didn't have a father. I was at every single soccer game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. I helped with homework until midnight and then got up at 5 a.m. to get ready for work. I drove them to friends' houses, picked them up from parties, paid for proms, graduations, you name it. And you know what? I was proud of what I'd accomplished. Despite everything, all 3 of them graduated high school. Jessica got her degree and landed a good job at a marketing firm. Marcus finally found his footing in construction and was making decent money. Sophia was in her last year of college, studying to be a teacher. I thought I'd done it. I thought I'd successfully raised 3 independent, grateful adults who understood the value of family and sacrifice. Boy, was I wrong. The problem started about 6 months ago when I got laid off from my job at the insurance company. Budget cuts, they said. Nothing personal, just numbers on a spreadsheet. After 22 years of loyal service, I was suddenly unemployed at 58 years old. Now let me tell you, finding a job at 58 is not easy, especially when you've been doing the same thing for over 2 decades. I applied everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I swallowed my pride and applied for retail jobs, restaurant positions, cleaning services. But every interview felt like a polite rejection waiting to happen. Too old, too experienced, or not experienced enough in newer technologies. My unemployment benefits were helping, but they weren't enough to cover my mortgage, utilities, groceries, and the minimum payments on those college loans I'd taken out for the kids. I was burning through my small emergency fund faster than I expected. That's when I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I called my children and asked for help. Now, before you judge me, let me explain something. These weren't kids struggling to make ends meet. Jessica was making close to $70,000 a year and living in a nice apartment downtown. Marcus had his own truck and was pulling in good money with his construction crew. Even Sophia had a part-time job and was living in a sorority house that I was still helping pay for. I wasn't asking them to support me completely. I just needed some temporary help with my mortgage while I found a new job. Maybe $500 each per month for a few months. That's $1,500 total between the three of them. Less than what I used to spend on just one of them for back-to-school shopping. The conversation with Jessica was the first red flag. "Mom, I really can't right now," she said, not even pausing to think about it. "I'm saving for a down payment on a condo, and plus, I just booked this amazing trip to Europe with my friends. It's already paid for and everything. A trip to Europe. While I was worried about losing the house I'd worked my entire adult life to pay for." But okay, I thought. Maybe Jessica really couldn't swing it right now. I called Marcus next. "Seriously, Mom? I've got my own bills to worry about. I just bought this new gaming setup for my apartment, and I'm thinking about getting a motorcycle. Besides, didn't you always say we needed to be independent?" Well, this is me being independent. A gaming setup and a motorcycle he was thinking about getting, while his mother was about to lose her home. I was starting to feel a knot in my stomach, but I still had hope when I called Sophia. "Oh, Mom, that's like really stressful," she said in that Valley Girl voice she'd picked up at college. "But honestly, I can barely afford my own stuff right now. Plus, didn't you always teach us that adults need to figure out their own problems? Maybe this is just like the universe telling you to downsize or something." Downsize? The universe telling me to downsize. These were my children, the children I'd raised, sacrificed everything for, put through school, supported through every crisis and heartbreak, and they were essentially telling me to figure it out on my own. But wait, it gets so much worse. You're not going to believe what happened next. About 2 weeks after those conversations, I was scrolling through Facebook. Yes, I know. I probably shouldn't have been torturing myself with social media when I was already feeling low. And I saw a post from Jessica. She was at some fancy restaurant downtown, posting pictures of what looked like a very expensive dinner with her friends. The caption read, "Sometimes you just have to treat yourself. Life's too short to worry about every little expense. Blessed actually living my best life. Treat yourself." While I was eating generic mac and cheese and trying to figure out which bill I could afford to be late on, then I saw Marcus's post about his new motorcycle. Not thinking about getting one, he'd actually bought it. A brand new Harley Davidson that probably cost more than what I was asking all three of them to contribute combined. His caption, "Finally got my dream bike. Hard work pays off. Self-made. Blessed self-made." As if I hadn't worked multiple jobs to put food on his table and clothes on his back for 18 years. But the post that really got to me was Sophia's. She was at some expensive spa with her sorority sisters, getting massages and facials. The post was full of pictures of them in fluffy robes, holding green smoothies, looking completely relaxed. Her caption read, "Self-care Sunday with my girls. Sometimes you have to invest in yourself and let go of other people's problems. Boundaries are so important. Self-care. Boundaries. Blessed. Let go of other people's problems. Boundaries. I was other people to my own daughter, and my financial crisis was just a problem she needed to establish boundaries around." I sat there staring at my phone, feeling something I'd never felt toward my children before. It wasn't just disappointment or hurt. It was something deeper, angrier. It was the feeling of realizing that the people you'd given your entire life to saw you as nothing more than an inconvenience. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about every sacrifice I'd made, every time I'd chosen their needs over my own wants, every opportunity I'd passed up to focus on being the best mother I could be. And this was my reward? The next morning, I got a group text from Jessica. My heart actually jumped a little, thinking maybe she'd reconsidered, maybe she'd talked to her siblings and they'd realized how awful they'd been. The text read, "Hey Mom, so we've been talking. and we think you might be being a little dramatic about this whole job situation. Like, you're not that old, and there are tons of jobs out there if you're really willing to work. Maybe you're just being too picky. Anyway, we love you, but we can't enable this kind of dependency. We learned that in therapy. Sometimes helping too much actually hurts people. We think this might be good for you in the long run. XOXO, enable dependency. In therapy, they'd learned that helping their struggling mother would actually hurt me. But guys, you haven't heard the worst part yet. Oh no, there's so much more to this story, and it gets absolutely insane. I was still processing that message when my phone rang. It was Jessica calling, and for a split second, I thought maybe she was calling to apologize, to explain that the text was some kind of mistake. "Hey Mom," she said, and I could hear traffic in the background. So I was just talking to this life coach I follow on Instagram, and she was saying how sometimes parents use their problems to manipulate their adult children into feeling guilty. And like, I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but maybe you should think about whether you're unconsciously doing that. I was manipulating them. By asking for help after losing my job at 58, I was unconsciously manipulating my children. "Jessica," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I'm not trying to manipulate anyone. I'm genuinely struggling here. I've never asked you kids for money before in your entire adult lives." "But that's the thing, Mom. You shouldn't have to ask us now. You raised us to be independent, right? Well, now you need to practice what you preached. Besides, Marcus was saying that maybe this is just like natural selection or whatever. Like, maybe you need to adapt or something. Natural selection." My son had compared my unemployment to natural selection, and my daughter was telling me about it like it was some profound wisdom. "I have to go, Mom. I'm meeting the girls for brunch. But seriously, think about what I said, okay? Love you." And she hung up. I sat there holding my phone, staring at the wall, feeling like I was in some kind of alternate reality. These couldn't be my children. The children I'd raised would never be this cold, this callous, this utterly lacking in basic human compassion. But then something happened that changed everything. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, knocked on my door. She's this sweet elderly woman who lives next door with her husband. They've always been kind to me, bringing me homemade soup when I was sick, helping me with my garden, just being good neighbors. "Rachel, honey," she said when I opened the door, "I hope you don't mind me asking, but are you doing okay? I noticed you've seemed stressed lately, and your car hasn't been leaving for work like it used to." I almost started crying right there on my doorstep. Here was a woman who barely knew me, showing more concern for my well-being than my own children had. So I told her. I told her about losing my job, about asking my kids for help, about their responses. And you know what she did? She invited me in for tea and actually listened. Not just waited for her turn to talk, but really listened. "You know," she said after I'd finished my story, "my daughter lives in Seattle with her family. She calls me every week to check on me and her father. Last month, when our roof started leaking, she didn't even wait for us to ask. She sent money immediately to get it fixed. And you know what she said when I tried to protest? She said, 'Mom, you spent your whole life taking care of me. Now it's my turn to take care of you.'" She paused, stirring her tea thoughtfully. "That's what family does, Rachel. That's what love looks like. What your children are doing, that's not normal. That's not okay." Hearing someone else say it, someone objective, someone with their own adult children, validated everything. I was feeling. I wasn't being dramatic. I wasn't being manipulative. I was a mother who needed help, and my children had turned their backs on me. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. 3. Days later, I got another group text, but this one was different. This one made me realize just how far my children's selfishness and cruelty could go. The text was from Marcus. "Hey Mom, so we've been talking more about your situation, and we think we have a solution that could work for everyone." My heart jumped again. Maybe they'd come to their senses. Maybe they'd realized how horrible they'd been. We think you should sell the house and move into one of those senior living communities. They're really nice now, not like the old nursing homes. You'd have less to worry about, and the money from selling the house could last you a while until you figure out your next steps. Plus, you'd be around people your own age, which might be good for you socially. We found a few places that look really nice, and some of them are only like $2,000 a month. Let us know what you think. Only $2,000 a month for a 58-year-old woman who wasn't even eligible for Social Security yet. They wanted me to sell my house, the house I'd worked my entire adult life to pay for, the house where I'd raised them, the house filled with memories of their father, and move into a senior living facility like I was some kind of burden they needed to warehouse. I called Jessica immediately. "Oh, good, you saw the text," she said, before I could even speak. "Isn't it a great idea? I mean, that house is way too big for just you anyway, and the maintenance must be such a pain. This way, you'd have people to take care of everything for you? Jessica, I'm 58 years old. I'm not ready for a senior living facility. I just need help finding a job and maybe some temporary financial assistance." "But Mom, that's the thing. At 58, maybe it's time to start accepting that your career is basically over. Like, who's going to hire someone your age when they could hire someone younger? This way, you could just relax and not worry about all that stress." My career was basically over at 58. "Besides," she continued, "we talked to the people at a few of these places and they said lots of people your age are moving in. It's becoming really popular. And think about it. We wouldn't have to worry about you being all alone in that big house anymore." They wouldn't have to worry. As if my living independently in my own home was somehow a burden on them. "What if I don't want to sell my house?" I asked. There was a pause. Then Jessica's voice changed, became cooler, more businesslike. "Well, Mom, obviously we can't force you to do anything. But we also can't keep worrying about you when you're not willing to make practical decisions. If you want to stay in that house and stress about money all the time, that's your choice. But don't expect us to enable that kind of thinking." Enable, there was that word again. "We love you, Mom, but we have our own lives to think about. We can't be responsible for your choices." And that's when it hit me. The final, devastating realization that changed everything. They didn't see me as their mother who needed help. They saw me as a problem that needed to be solved, an inconvenience that needed to be managed, a burden that needed to be dealt with efficiently and then forgotten about. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd packed thousands of lunches, helped with homework, bandaged scraped knees, celebrated birthdays and holidays, and I made a decision. If they wanted to treat me like I was already dead to them, then maybe it was time to give them exactly what they wanted. But what I did next? Guys, I'm not sure if it was brilliant or completely insane. You're going to have to tell me in the comments, because what happened after I made my decision shocked everyone, including me. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I started by calling a realtor, not to sell my house. Oh, no, that wasn't my plan at all. I called to ask about rental properties, specifically nice rental properties in different cities, places where I could start over, where nobody knew me as the struggling single mom who couldn't get her life together. Then I called my lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer. After my husband died, I'd made sure to have all my legal affairs in order. I told him I wanted to update my will, and I wanted to do it immediately. Everything, I told him, goes to charity. The house, my life insurance, my retirement accounts, everything. I want it split between the children's hospital where I used to volunteer and the animal rescue where I got my dog. Rachel, he said carefully, are you sure about this? What about your children? What about them? I replied. They've made it very clear that they don't need anything from me. They're independent, self-made, and I'd hate to enable any dependency by leaving them an inheritance. I could hear him trying not to laugh as he wrote down my instructions. Next, I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I went to the bank and closed the joint accounts I still had with Sophia, accounts I'd kept open to help her with college expenses when needed. There wasn't much money in them anyway, but it felt symbolic. Then I came home and wrote 3 letters, one for each of my children. I'm not going to read you the whole letters. They were pretty long and very personal, but the basic message was this. I was tired of being treated like a burden, so I was removing myself from their lives entirely. They wouldn't have to worry about me anymore because they'd never hear from me again. I wished them well, but I was done. I sealed the letters and put them on my kitchen counter, but I didn't mail them yet, because first I had one more thing to do. I packed 2 suitcases with my most important belongings, loaded my dog Bailey into my car, and I left. I drove to a beautiful bed and breakfast about 4 hours away, in a small town I'd always loved, but never had time to really explore. I checked in for 2 weeks and paid cash. For the first time in months, I felt free. I spent those 2 weeks hiking, reading, exploring the town, talking to locals, and just breathing. Bailey loved all the new smells and places to explore. The owners of the bed and breakfast, a lovely couple named Tom and Linda, were wonderful company. We'd sit on their porch in the evenings, drinking wine and talking about everything and nothing. It was Linda who gave me the idea that changed everything. "You know," she said one evening, "you remind me of my sister. She went through something similar with her kids. Not exactly the same, but that feeling of being taken for granted. She ended up moving across the country and starting completely over. Best thing she ever did." "But how?" I asked. "I mean, starting over at this age." "Honey," Linda laughed, 58 isn't dead. My sister was 62 when she moved to Arizona and started her pottery business. She's 70 now and makes more money than she ever did in her corporate job. Plus, she's happy. That night, lying in the comfortable bed at the B&B, listening to Bailey snoring softly beside me, I made my final decision. I wasn't going back. Not to my old life, not to begging my children for scraps of affection, not to walking on eggshells around people who should love me unconditionally. I was going to disappear from their lives entirely and build something new. The next morning, I called a moving company and arranged to have my belongings packed and put into storage. I called the post office and set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box. I even called my utilities and arranged to have everything shut off. But here's the thing I didn't expect, guys. Here's where the story takes a turn that even I couldn't have predicted. While I was busy disappearing from my old life, my children were about to face some consequences they never saw coming. And when I say consequences, I mean the kind that change everything. Because you see, there were things about our family's financial situation that they didn't know. Things I'd never told them about because I didn't want them to worry or feel guilty about the sacrifices I'd made. But those things were about to become very, very important. And what happened next? Well, let's just say karma has a sense of humor, and sometimes it moves faster than you'd expect. I mailed those 3 letters on my way out of town. By the time my children read them, I was already 500 miles away, starting my new life. But I had no idea that less than 24 hours after they received those letters, their whole world was about to come crashing down in a way they never could have imagined. So there I was, sitting in a charming little cafe in this mountain town, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Bailey was lying at my feet, and I was actually enjoying my coffee instead of just using it to stay awake. For the first time in months, I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes, wasn't worried about bills, wasn't stressed about anything. I'd found a cute little apartment above an antique shop that the owner was willing to rent month to month. It wasn't fancy, but it had character and a view of the mountains that took my breath away every morning. The rent was less than half what I'd been paying on my mortgage, and the town was the kind of place where people still said hello to strangers on the street. I was finally starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, I could actually build a new life here. That's when my phone started ringing. It was Jessica. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then declined the call. 30 seconds later, it rang again. Jessica again. I declined it again. Then came the texts. Oh my God, the texts. Mom, call me back right now. This isn't funny anymore. Where are you? Mom, call me. I'm calling the police if you don't answer your phone. Then Marcus started calling. Then Sophia. My phone was buzzing nonstop with calls and increasingly frantic text messages. Mom, what do you mean you're done? Done with what? Are you having some kind of breakdown? This is crazy. You can't just disappear. Where are you? I turned my phone off and ordered another coffee. But guys, I had no idea what was happening back home. I had no clue about the absolute chaos that was unfolding. Because you see, when I decided to disappear from their lives, I forgot about one tiny little detail that was about to become a very big problem for my children. I was the co-signer on Marcus's truck loan and Jessica's student loans and the apartment lease that Sophia had needed a co-signer for because she didn't have enough credit history. Remember how I told you I'd sacrificed everything for these kids? Well, one of those sacrifices was putting my name on things to help them get started in life. Things that required monthly payments. Things that would default if those payments weren't made. Now you might be thinking, but Rachel, those are their responsibilities. They're the ones who have to make those payments. And you'd be absolutely right. Except for one little problem. None of my children were actually as financially stable as they'd pretended to be. Marcus's construction work? It was seasonal and inconsistent. Those big paychecks he'd been bragging about on social media? They came in spurts, followed by weeks of no work at all. He'd been living paycheck to paycheck, using credit cards to fill in the gaps, and his truck payment was already 2 months behind. Jessica's $70,000 salary. She'd been laid off 3 weeks ago and hadn't told anyone because she was embarrassed. She'd been putting all her expenses on credit cards, including that fancy Europe trip she couldn't cancel, hoping she'd find another job before anyone noticed. And Sophia? Sweet little Sophia, who was too busy with self-care and boundaries to help her mother. She'd dropped out of college 2 months earlier, but hadn't told anyone because she was afraid of disappointing us. She'd been using her student loan money to pay rent and party with her sorority sisters instead of going to classes. But here's the really beautiful part of this story, guys. The part that still makes me smile when I think about it. I didn't know any of this yet. I was just enjoying my peaceful morning in my new town when my phone started buzzing again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize, so I answered. Is this Rachel Martinez? The voice asked. Yes, this is Rachel. Hi, this is Jennifer from First National Bank. I'm calling about the auto loan for Marcus Martinez. Our records show you as the co-signer, and the account is now 3 months past due. We've been trying to reach Mr. Martinez, but he's not responding to our calls. 3 months past due. My son, who couldn't spare $500 to help his struggling mother, had been defaulting on his truck payments for 3 months. We need to arrange payment immediately, or we'll have to begin repossession proceedings, Jennifer continued. I see, I said calmly. And what happens if I, as the co-signer, also can't make the payments? Well, the vehicle would be repossessed, and both you and Mr. Martinez would be responsible for any remaining balance after the vehicle is sold. It would also impact both of your credit scores significantly. Thank you for letting me know, I said. I'll discuss this with Marcus. But of course, I had no intention of discussing anything with Marcus, or paying his truck payment, or doing anything to help any of them ever again. 20 minutes later, I got another call. This one was from the student loan servicing company about Jessica's loans. 30 minutes after that, it was Sophia's landlord asking why the rent was late and whether I was still guaranteeing the lease. By noon, I had a complete picture of just how spectacularly my children had been lying to me and to themselves about their financial situations. That evening, my phone rang again. This time I answered. Mom! It was Jessica, and she sounded panicked. Thank God you answered. We need to talk. Do we? I said calmly. Yes. Mom, there's been some kind of mix-up with my student loans, and they're saying you're not responding to their calls about payment arrangements. That's not a mix-up, Jessica. I'm not responding because I'm not paying. Silence. What do you mean you're not paying? I mean exactly what I said. I'm not paying your student loan, or Marcus's truck, payment, or guaranteeing Sophia's rent anymore. But you can't do that. You're the co-signer. You're absolutely right. I am the co-signer, which means I'm legally responsible for these debts. But being legally responsible and choosing to pay are two different things. Mom, this is insane. If you don't pay, it'll ruin your credit. And this, guys, is where I started laughing, actually laughing out loud. Jessica, sweetie, I'm 58 years old, unemployed, and according to you, my career is basically over. What exactly do I need good credit for? I'm not buying a house. I'm renting month to month. I'm not buying a car. Mine is paid off. What are they going to do? Make it harder for me to get loans I don't want anyway? More silence. But Jessica, I continued, you're 28 years old with your whole career ahead of you. How's your credit looking these days? That's when she started crying. Mom, I lost my job. I've been looking for weeks, but nobody's hiring, and I've been using credit cards for everything. And if my student loans default, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I was being manipulative for asking for help. That's not. We didn't mean. Mom, please. We can work something out, can we? Because 3 weeks ago when I asked for help, you told me you were saving for a condo and going to Europe. How's Europe, by the way? I canceled the trip. Did you? That's interesting because your Instagram shows you at the airport yesterday. Another pause, longer this time. Okay, I went, but only because it was already paid for and I couldn't get a refund. Right. Well, I hope it was worth it, because it might be your last vacation for a while. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Marcus called. Mom, what the hell is going on? Some bank called me about my truck and they said you're not answering their calls. That's right, Marcus, I'm not. But they're going to take my truck. Probably. Mom, I need that truck for work. Then you should have made the payments. Or better yet, you should have thought about that before you bought a motorcycle, while your mother was asking for help to avoid losing her house. That's different. The bike was a good deal and I got financing for it. More financing. How's that working out for you? Silence. Then quietly. Mom, I'm behind on everything. If they take the truck, I can't work. If I can't work, I can't pay for anything. I'll lose my apartment, everything. Sounds like you should have made better choices. Please, Mom, I'm sorry, okay? We all are. We didn't realize how bad things were for you. No, Marcus. You didn't care how bad things were for me. There's a difference. That's not true. Really. Because when I told you I might lose my house, you told me it was natural selection. When I asked for help, you said you couldn't spare money because you were thinking about buying a motorcycle, which, by the way, you apparently did buy. I was scared, okay? I was scared about my own bills, and I didn't know how to help you without making things worse for myself. And right there, guys, was the first honest thing any of my children had said to me in months. So you chose yourself, I said quietly. Yeah, I chose myself. Well, Marcus, now I'm choosing myself too. I hung up on him as well. Sophia called next, but I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, though, and when I listened to it later, it was just her crying and saying, Mommy, please call me back, over and over again. For a split second, hearing her call me Mommy like she used to when she was little, I almost wavered. Almost. But then I remembered her Instagram post about boundaries and letting go of other people's problems. The next few days were intense. My phone was constantly buzzing with calls and texts from all three of them. The messages ranged from angry to pleading to trying to guilt me into helping them. "This isn't who you are, Mom. You're destroying our lives. We're your children. What would Dad think about what you're doing?" That last one, from Jessica almost, made me call her back just to tell her exactly what her father would think. He'd be disgusted by how they'd treated me, and they knew it, but I didn't call back. Instead, I blocked all their numbers. And then, guys, something amazing started happening. Without the constant stress of worrying about bills I couldn't pay and children who didn't appreciate me, I started to feel alive again. I woke up in the morning excited about the day instead of dreading it. I started taking Bailey on long hikes in the mountains. I joined a book club at the local library. I even started volunteering at the animal shelter. The woman who ran the shelter, a firecracker named Carol, who was probably in her 70s, took one look at me and said, "You've got the look of someone who's just escaped something awful." When I told her my story, the abbreviated version, she just nodded knowingly. "Honey, I've got 4 kids of my own, and let me tell you something. The ones who love you don't make you beg for scraps. The ones who love you show up." Carol became my first real friend in my new town. She introduced me to other women who'd reinvented their lives later in life. There was Susan, who'd left her ungrateful family at 65 and started a successful catering business. There was Maria, who'd moved across the country at 70 after her kids tried to put her in a nursing home, and now taught Spanish at the community college. These women didn't just survive starting over, they thrived, and slowly, so was I. I found a part-time job at a local bookstore that I absolutely loved. The pay wasn't much, but combined with my unemployment benefits and the money I was saving by not paying my children's bills, I was actually doing okay financially. But the real transformation was emotional. For the first time in years, maybe decades, I was living for myself. I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what my children needed or expected. It was liberating in a way I'd never experienced. That's when I got the call that changed everything again. I'd been in my new town for about 6 weeks when my lawyer called. "Rachel, I hate to bother you, but I've been getting some calls from your children. They're asking about your whereabouts, and one of them mentioned something about having you declared mentally incompetent." I nearly dropped the phone. "They what?" "It sounds like they're exploring legal options to force you to come home and resume your responsibilities as their co-signer." I was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Can they do that? Not easily, and not based on what I know about your situation. You'd have to be genuinely mentally incapacitated, and choosing to move away and start over isn't evidence of that. "But Rachel, they're also asking about your will." "What about it?" "They want to know if you've made any recent changes." And that's when I realized something that made me smile for the first time in weeks. My children weren't just panicking about their immediate financial problems. They were panicking about their long-term financial security too. You see, they'd always assumed that someday, when I died, they'd inherit my house, my life insurance, my retirement accounts. They'd been counting on that money, planning their futures around it. But now that inheritance was going to charity, and they were starting to figure that out. "What should I tell them if they call again?" my lawyer asked. "Tell them that I'm competent, I'm safe, and my legal affairs are in order. And if they continue to harass you or try to have me declared incompetent, you'll be filing harassment charges." "I can do that." "Good. Oh, and one more thing. I want to add a clause to my will." "What kind of clause?" "If any of my children contest the will or make any attempt to have me declared incompetent, they forfeit any right to even the personal items I was originally planning to leave them." That's pretty harsh, Rachel. So is trying to have your mother declared mentally incompetent because she won't pay your bills. 2 weeks later, I got a letter forwarded from my old address. It was from Marcus, and it was written on actual paper, not a text or email. "Mom," it said, "I know you probably hate us right now, and maybe we deserve it. My truck got repossessed yesterday. I'm going to lose my apartment next month. I had to move back in with my buddy Jake, and I'm sleeping on his couch. But the worst part isn't the money stuff. The worst part is realizing what we did to you. I keep thinking about all the times you helped us, all the sacrifices you made, and how we threw it back in your face when you needed us. I don't know if you'll ever forgive us, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not because I want you to come back and fix my problems, but because I love you and I know we hurt you in a way that might not be fixable. I hope you're happy wherever you are. I hope you're doing all the things you never got to do because you were too busy taking care of us. You deserved better children than us. Love, Marcus, I cried when I read that letter. Not because I was sad, but because it was the first time in years that one of my children had acknowledged what I'd sacrificed for them. But I didn't write back. A week later, I got another letter, this one from Sophia. "Mommy," it began, and my heart clenched a little. I dropped out of school. I know I should have told you, but I was scared you'd be disappointed. I've been lying about everything for months, using my student loan money for stupid stuff instead of going to classes. Now I'm going to have to pay all that money back, and I don't even have a degree to show for it. I had to move back home with Jessica because I couldn't afford my rent anymore. But you know what the worst part is? It's not the money. It's that I can't call you when I'm scared or sad or confused. I can't ask you for advice or just hear your voice telling me everything's going to be okay. I know we don't deserve your forgiveness, but I miss you so much it hurts. I keep looking at old pictures of us when I was little, and you always looked so happy to be with us. I don't know when we stopped appreciating that, or when we started taking you for granted. I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. Love, your little girl. That letter broke my heart and put it back together at the same time, but I still didn't write back. The third letter came from Jessica, and it was different from the others. "Mom, I need you to know that I've been going to therapy. Real therapy, not just following life coaches on Instagram. Dr. Peterson helped me understand that what we did to you wasn't just cruel. It was abusive. We abused your love and your generosity, and when you needed us most, we abandoned you. She helped me see that we learned to take from you without giving back because you made it so easy. You never set boundaries with us, never made us face consequences, never taught us that love is supposed to be reciprocal. I'm not blaming you for how we turned out. We're adults, and we made our own choices. But I think we never learned how to love you properly, because you never demanded that we try. I lost my apartment last week. Sophia and I are living together in a tiny studio, sharing a bed like we did when we were kids, and Dad was alive. Neither of us has a job, and we're both facing financial ruin. But you know what? We're talking to each other in a way we haven't in years. We're actually supporting each other instead of competing for your attention and resources. I think maybe we needed to lose everything to remember what really matters. I don't expect you to forgive us. I don't expect you to come back and save us from the mess we made. But I needed you to know that we're finally growing up, and part of that growth is understanding what we lost when we lost you. You were the best mother 3 selfish children could have asked for, and we threw it away. I hope you found happiness wherever you are. I hope you found people who appreciate you the way we never did. All my love, Jessica P.S. I saw the changes to your will. We deserved that too. That night, I sat on my little balcony with Bailey at my feet, looking out at the mountains and thinking about those letters. My children were finally learning the lessons I'd tried to teach them their whole lives. They were learning about consequences, about reciprocity, about what it means to truly lose something precious. But here's the thing, guys. Here's the part of this story that surprised me most of all. I wasn't angry anymore. Somewhere along the way, living my new life, finding my own happiness, I'd let go of the rage and hurt that had driven me to leave in the first place. I was proud of myself for finally choosing my own well-being over their dysfunction. I was grateful for the hard lesson that had forced me to rebuild my life in a way that actually made me happy. But I wasn't angry, and that's when I made my final decision about my relationship with my children. I wrote them each a letter. My dear child, each letter began. I received your letter, and I want you to know that it meant everything to me to read your words. For the first time in years, I felt like I was hearing from the child I raised, not the entitled adult you'd become. I forgive you, not because what you did was okay, and not because I'm ready to go back to the way things were, but because carrying anger around is exhausting, and I'm too happy in my new life to waste energy on resentment. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean going back to enabling your poor choices or sacrificing my well-being for your comfort. I have a new life now, one that I built for myself after you made it clear that I wasn't welcome in yours. I have friends who appreciate me, work that fulfills me, and a peace that I never had when I was constantly worried about fixing your problems. I will always love you. You will always be my children, but you are no longer my responsibility, and I am no longer your safety net. If you want a relationship with me moving forward, it will have to be different. It will have to be based on mutual respect and genuine care for each other's well-being. It will have to be the kind of relationship where you call to check on me just because you're thinking about me, not because you need something. I'm not ready for that kind of relationship yet. Maybe someday I will be. Maybe someday you'll prove that you've truly changed, not just because you're facing consequences, but because you've genuinely learned what love looks like. Until then, I wish you well. I hope you build good lives for yourselves, lives that don't depend on other people's sacrifices. Take care of each other. That's what family is supposed to do. Love always, Mom. I mailed those letters 6 months ago. I've gotten a few responses. Birthday cards, holiday cards, occasional updates about their lives. They're all slowly getting back on their feet, working, jobs they don't love, but that pay the bills, sharing an apartment and actually supporting each other. They don't ask me for money anymore. They don't ask me to come home and resume my old role as their personal bank and problem solver. Sometimes they just check in, ask how I'm doing, tell me about their lives, share memories from when they were little. It's not the relationship we used to have, but it's healthier. It's more honest. It's based on choice rather than obligation. And you know what? I'm happy. Really genuinely happy in a way I haven't been since before their father died. I have a life that's mine. I have friends who value me. I have work that I enjoy and a home that feels peaceful. I learned that it's never too late to choose yourself. It's never too late to demand better treatment from the people who claim to love you. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. My children called me a burden, and in response, I removed that burden from their lives completely. And you know what happened? They realized that I was never the burden. Their selfishness was the burden. Their entitlement was the burden. Their inability to appreciate what they had was the burden. Losing me didn't make their lives easier. It made them realize how much harder life is without someone who loves you unconditionally. But by then, I'd already learned how much better life could be when you love yourself unconditionally first. So that's my story, guys. The story of how my children called me a burden and how removing that burden from their lives taught all of us what really matters. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Do I regret it? Not for a single second. Sometimes love means staying and fighting. Sometimes it means letting go and walking away. The trick is knowing which situation you're in. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was I right to disappear from their lives? Would you have done the same thing? And if you're dealing with ungrateful family members who take you for granted, maybe it's time to ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped being available for people who don't appreciate you? Thanks for listening to my story. It feels good to finally tell it. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you deserve people in your life who choose you back. Love, Rachel.